the natives have retaken their homeland. Not the natives of any country or region here on Earth, but the natives of a remote planet, the planet of Numala. After overthrowing the authority figures, you and your fellow convicts took charge of the colony here on the planet. And in doing so, much to the chagrin of the governor and what was left of the authority figures, you subjugated the natives as well. In previous years, the governor and the captain of the Marines had done all that they could to harbor good relations with these native peoples. However, once you and your brethren rose, you decided that you had best not trust anyone outside the fold, and so you took the land and resources and power away from these native people. But now, they seek vengeance. Someone has released them from their shackles. Someone has given them their weapons back. And it's too late by the time you realize most of your men are dead. Luckily for you, your palace doubles as a flying warship. So, what do? Well, you get out of there, naturally, and just in the nick of time, for it seems the natives are not your only problem. It seems as though you unwittingly built your home on top of an active volcano. A volcano that erupts at this most inopportune of times, and you can see beneath you the governor and the Marines and a good amount of the natives, as well as a few of your men that the natives hadn't got to yet. You see all of them burning to death in a sea of lava. And yet, luckily enough for you, you're in your flying warship of doom. You fly away from this mayhem. You fly towards the sea. And yet, as you go down this valley of mountains, something rises up out of the ocean. Something immensely large. And such is perhaps a typical session of Durance, a role-playing game by Jason Morningstar and Bully Pulpit Games. Durance is a fantastic role-playing game. Hopefully that kind of grabbed you there, the opening. But yeah, it is a really, really cool game. It's a sci-fi prison planet game, and essentially the backstory is, in the near future, once mankind has the ability to, travel to remote planets with, relative ease, at least, make it feasible enough to do it, essentially it'd be like if we woke up tomorrow and, we had thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of planets at our disposal that we could go check out and see if, they could possibly harbor life. And, of course, we do that very thing. We send out survey drones and teams and the like to bring back reports, and so they've brought back reports of some planets that look pretty good to live on. And so, the powers to be are sitting around thinking, what's the best way to go about colonizing these planets? And what they decide is that we should send all the convicts, all the problem people in society, all the people that we don't want to deal with anymore, let's send them out to these remote planets, and let's, kind of let them be the workforce, build, a civilization and society there. And of course, you can't just send the convicts, we're gonna have to send some authority figures, some people to keep those riotous convicts in line, as well as some people that perhaps aren't authority figures, but certainly not convicts, perhaps people thrill seekers or adventurers or people looking for a better life, or for whatever reason, I suppose it just appeals to some people to, hey, go see if you can survive on this planet that we know little about and no one ever has lived there before. Yeah, go out there and see if you can do that and let us know how it is. I suppose that appeals to some people, if you romanticize it. So that's kind of the setting, or the backstory, I guess, for any given session of Durance. However, as you can imagine, the planet is not exactly what it appears to be, or what the survey report said it should be. You were told 6 things about this planet. You were told that the atmosphere is excellent, the climate is mild, geology is stable, hydrology is favorable, biology is benign, and intelligent life is absent. Now those are 6 things that, if they're true, it's pretty good, a pretty nice place to live. However, 3 of those things are not true. The opposite is true for them. So you go around as a group and you collaboratively, establish which of those 3 things are true and which are not true. For the planet of New Mala, which the opening piece was based on, I believe that the atmosphere was not excellent. It was horrific. Because of these active volcanoes, there was constant ash and soot in the air, so much to the extent that it was, disastrous for your health. You had to have a biosuit at all times if you were going to go walking about in the open air. But those, biosuits aren't easily afforded for everyone, so that was sort of an issue. The climate was mild, geology was stable, hydrology was favorable, which is pretty nice. Biology was not benign, and intelligent life was not absent, as evident by the natives with the laser spears. I suppose spears are kind of, perceived as a primitive thing, and, but yeah, they were laser spears, perhaps a trope of the genre, but pretty, that they were highly intelligent natives, yeah, albeit perhaps a bit more primitive than the player characters. But yes, that's sort of how you go about defining a planet, and each session that you play is going to be a different planet, with different, built-in story hooks and problems and obstacles to overcome. So that's pretty cool. The same with the colonial record, the record of, obviously, the colony. You were told 6 things about it: that the planning is meticulous, population density is low, the workforce is motivated, prosperity is high, order is well established, and justice is universal. However, 3 of those things were also not true. I believe for our colony, planning was not meticulous, order was not well established, and justice was not universal, which is why the convicts had overthrown authority in events prior to the start of our gaming session. But yes, so that's sort of Durance, the role-playing game. As I said before, it's a very, very fun game. It's typically for 3 to 5 players maximum. 3 to 5 players, I would say 4 actually is ideal. And the way that it works is actually everyone controls 2 characters. You get an authority character and a convict character. And there's different tiers of the characters, with the governor being on top for authority, and then the captain of the Marines, and so on and so forth. And the same for the convict. You have different tiers. Sort of the Dimber Damber, who's like the mob boss, as it were. He's the leader of the convicts. He's at the top. There's Captain Sharp, who's sort of the right-hand man of the Dimber Damber, and he's sort of a ruthless enforcer, to be feared by many. There's Bolters, who are actually my favorite sort of class, I guess, or grouping of characters, as it were, in the game. Bolters are runaway gangsters, convict royalty. They're convicts, but they've sort of somehow ascended or escaped from that status of being a convict. It's sort of like if the Dimber Damber was the mob boss, the Bolters would perhaps be the the bosses underneath him. So it's pretty cool because it affords you a certain amount of freedom without being a free man, sort of, much like being, it's much like the same appeal as being in the mob. You have a lot of power, but you are also, responsible for a lot of things and beholden to a lot of people. So it's a pretty cool game. But yes, everyone controls 2 characters, and death is a very, very possible thing, if not inevitable thing, in this game. Most of the characters that you interact with are going to die. Most of the characters that your friends play are probably going to die, and even most of the characters that you play, more likely than not, probably will meet their end some way or another. I believe in the first session we played, only 2 characters survived the events of the game, and one of them basically ended up being, more or less a servitor of the Dark Lords, a minion of Cthulhu, a fate worse than death. I'll say that much. That's to be sure. One character did escape the planet, everything that was going awry, and go on to live another day. But yes, it is a game where things go wrong. Obviously, whatever planet you start out with, even if you didn't have, for example, Numala, if your atmosphere was good and there was no biology, and biology was benign, and intelligent life was absent, then your climate would not be mild, your hydrology would not be favorable, and your geology would not be stable. So, there'd probably be a megastorm sweeping the planet as, earthquakes constantly, riddle the upper layer. The earth randomly just splits open and, huge, hydrology is favorable. That's sort of the worst one, that if it's not true. If you don't have water on a remote planet, or don't have means of getting more water, that's a problem for everyone. And so each game session of Durance is going to be a lot different, and I think things like Durance work well as sort of palate cleansers. If you have your D&D or your Pathfinder or your World of Darkness, long-running campaign that's been going on for 9 months or 9 years or whatever it is, and you want to meet this week or this month or your regular session, and you want a game because it's fun, that's why we do it, but you don't want, you want to break from the norm, you want to break from the same character you always play, the same setting you always play in, or maybe it's, a couple people can't make it, so you have to sort of figure out something else to do for an evening of gaming. And that is when Durance really shines the most, in my opinion. Each session of it is almost inevitably a one-off, because, like I said, all the characters will probably die. You can maybe stretch it into 2 sessions if you really wanted to, but it's sort of built for the one-off. Much like I think Cthulhu functions in a similar way. It's nice to have in between your fantasy or your other horror or whatever, have a session or 2 of Cthulhu as sort of a palate cleanser, because games like Durance are really different than your traditional sort of RPG, I guess. Different in the sense that everyone controls not 1 character but 2. You don't have any there's no dots on your sheet, there's no stats, it's all just, face-to-face, eye contact, role-playing, and also, most importantly perhaps, there is no GM. Yes, that's right, the game is GM-less, which means that everyone here sitting around, your gaming table, we're all players, and we all have the same amount of power and authority. And how that works, actually, is when it comes around to your turn, as it were, you stage a question for these other characters. You would say, perhaps, what does James do when he finds Tim rifling through his underwear drawer? And then, I would pose that question, and then these players would have to, they could, storytell and roleplay, set up the scene, say, oh, well, we're here. It's already assumed he's in the underwear drawer, but, you can, when it comes around to your turn, you essentially pose a question that you want answered by these 2 players, and they play it out. Also, each character has an oath that you give them, and some of them are quite ridiculous, such as, I believe one was, I will never keep a promise. I will never moderate my power. I will never tolerate incompetence. I will never miss an opportunity to eat well. I will never prevent insert person, group, object, or location from being harmed. Yeah, I will never allow an innocent to go hungry. I mean, it goes on and on, but yes, there's these, each character has an oath, and so the, sort of, I guess the point of the game is to see how these conflicting oaths come into play, and the result that ensues. So, like a lot of games without a GM, it doesn't rely on the players pulling together and working as a group, as much as almost the players each pulling out in a separate direction and ripping apart from the seams, or even, a lot of times coming in direct opposition to each other. Because, like I said, the GM and the players are sort of one and the same in a game like Durance. And it makes it really nice, too, having a character that's on, the side of authority, and a character that's on the side of the convicts. So you're not really pulling for one side or another, even if you actually are. It sort of makes you like an unbiased third party, even though you're still, into the characters and into the game. You can kind of, it's, when you have two characters, like I said, it's nice. When one of them dies, you don't feel quite as well, you're not quite as sensitive about it, When a character dies in a game like D&D or World of Darkness, you're kind of like, well, I mean, should I just go home? Or, I guess that's it for me. Later, guys. But, in something like Durance or Call of Cthulhu, you can whip up another character lickety-split, or even control more than one character, such as in Durance. So, I would highly recommend the game. It's very, very cool, and it's definitely worth the money for it. Alright, thanks for tuning in, you guys.